Well, good morning. Thanks for joining us on this last Sunday in March. Over the years, I've learned there are businesses around the Upper Peninsula that don't get the same attention some of the major companies do, but each one makes a contribution to life and economic development in this region. This morning, we'll find out more about one of them. And later in the show, we'll take you back several years to a medical appointment I had that provided a real look inside of me. Hopefully that piqued your interest to stay around this morning for the whole show, which all starts right now.
From TV6, this is The Ryan Report. Now, here's your host, Don Ryan.
Well, there's an organization called Operation Action UP, which each year recognizes businesses that contribute to the economy of the Upper Peninsula. Being part of those meetings for many years, I've learned there are a number of interesting businesses scattered throughout Upper Michigan that provide unique products and services that serve national and international markets from right here, and in the process create jobs and grow the economy of this region. One of the companies recognized this year is called Northern Wings Repair, and it's based in Newberry. I thought they had a very interesting story to tell, so I invited their president, David Goudreau, to join us this morning so he could share that story. Welcome to the Ryan Report.
Well, it's a privilege to be here. Thank you.
It's very nice to have you with us. You know, before we talk about your company, let's talk a little bit about you. I understand you're a UP native, and I think you might have grown up in St. Ignace. Is that correct?
That's correct. I was born and raised in St. Ignace and then departed for the service at a very early age and spent about 25 years before I came back.
You also went to Lake Superior State University?
Yes. My first departure was, I did a stint in the United States Navy, which got me the GI Bill, which paid for my college at Lake Superior State University.
Okay. And you were an aviator in the
well, my career is, that's where I spent the preponderance of my time. As I said, I was an enlisted sailor and then an infantry officer for about 2 years, and then the remainder of my time, for 20 years, I was a Marine helicopter pilot, yes, an aviator.
And so was it right after coming out of the service that you decided to start this business in the Newberry or in the eastern UP?
Well, it actually started as an idea in my garage in Brookfield, Wisconsin.
Okay.
And then expanded to a small pole barn in Engadine, Michigan. And then from there to the facility, the custom built facility we have now in Newberry.
So when did the business start in Engadine, for example?
August 31st, 2001, on my birthday.
2001.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Was it a struggle to get started? Was it
well, think about that timing. August 31st, 2001. 11 days later, the single largest disaster in the history of aviation took place on 9/11.
Right.
So to say it was difficult would be an understatement, both for customers, financing, and nearly everything else.
Okay. By 2010, you had about 20 employees, and you had expanded into a new facility in Newberry, so you were really off and running at that point.
Yes, we capitalized on a lot of things, and we always try to stay ahead of the latest trend in either quality or development, and that's what's kept us there. So in order to expand, we needed significant space with fundamental requirements which were offered by the industrial park.
Okay. And are you expanding again now, your physical facility?
We just completed a 3,000 square foot expansion, primarily for freight handling and segregation of our FAA designated parts and equipment.
And do you expect your employment to stay at about this 20 employee level, or?
No, but that's a difficult point. As we talked prior to the show, is that the pool is both not as deep nor not as broad as it is in urban areas, so you must resort to training your own employees, and that's a significant amount of time.
Okay, we'll get back to that in a couple of minutes. Even early on in the game, you were receiving recognition from companies, for example, like Boeing. You know, what is it that was unique about what you were doing that brought this recognition to your company?
One word: quality, or maybe 3 words: quality, quality, quality. And quality isn't just measured in the parts that you produce or what you deliver. It's where you deliver it, when you deliver it, did you do so on time, and they keep very stringent records of every transaction.
You also have a couple of other locations now. What services do they provide?
The Brookfield, Wisconsin office is where the idea was born, and of course we have an accounting and sales office there.
Okay.
And we have a individual sales office, as well as we do some remote engineering from our Raleigh, North Carolina offices.
Okay. Help us to understand exactly what it is you do.
Elevator pitch time, right?
right,
Okay,
right.
so we
Now,
are.
take your time.
No, it's okay. We are responsible for the repair, distribution, manufacture of aircraft parts, both aircraft and aerospace related services. So and each one of those has their own quality system, so you must be qualified in each one of those particular categories, which makes it difficult. But that's our three pillars. We also have a smaller construction arm that does remediation and repair for government facilities in the summertime. Very small, very small.
So help me to understand why someone, you know, would look to Newberry, Michigan to well, I guess first of all, establish this kind of business, and secondly, why customers might be drawn to this area.
There's a lot this has to offer, and that leads into the economic development portion of this. I was drawn here because my family's been here for, well, what, 200 years or so. And the facilities, this industrial park concept is what drew us there due to the complications. There were significant environmental and infrastructure restrictions to our facility in Engadine. So I called in the two smartest gentlemen I knew from my time in the service, and we did essentially a pre-invasion needs analysis, if you will.
Okay.
And it's oddly enough, the 5 points we needed were located in Newberry.
Now, were you intent on getting in the aviation business right off the bat, or did you consider other options?
I considered numerous other options, and I received some very sound advice from a successful uncle who said, go with what you know. And I've known aviation from a safety standpoint, operational, maintenance, and quality. So that's how it began.
Okay, and you're not just selling parts, are you? This isn't just like a warehouse where you're selling
No.
parts. There's much more to it than that, isn't there?
That's correct. The business model, the strategy we started with was based on three premises, and that was it began as a repair station, which is FAA certificated, and we suffer or endure, I guess, all of the regulatory burdens that come with that. Our aerospace manufacturing portion, of course, is responsible for the international quality standard of AS 9100, and then our stocking and distribution is audited and governed by the AC 0056A, which is an FAA advisory circular.
I want to follow up on that in just a couple of minutes. We'll be back with more on the Ryan Report after we take this break. Once again, our guest this morning is David Goodrow from the Northern Wings Repair in Newberry. Let's talk about, is it fair to call your company a global company?
Easily.
Serving global markets?
Sure, absolutely, absolutely.
And you have some of the biggest companies in the world that are taking advantage of your services.
That's correct, yes.
I've seen names like Boeing and NASA, Lockheed Martin.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I think it's interesting to our people to understand how you make those kind of contacts, how a company in Newberry can serve those companies. You know, how do you make the connections?
Under the federal acquisition regulations, there are stipulations that these large companies, in order to obtain prime contracts with the government, must do business with certain categories of small businesses. If you understand the macroeconomics of it, it makes perfect sense. All you must do is go out and introduce yourself to these companies and then understand the liability that's inherent to dealing in aviation products to begin with. So once you gain their confidence, the door is wide open.
You were talking before we went to the break. You really have to meet a lot of standards, be certified in a lot of areas to be able to do this work. Talk about that a little more.
Each of our capabilities is independently audited. So you've got to schedule, pay for that, and abide by an international standard. Over 250 countries abide by the ISO quality standard, and that's supposed to enhance profitability and increase product quality. So each one of these, and which is kind of a unique question, because each one of those three individual audits we have combined into I don't know if the word is proprietary, but we use a methodology that specifically addresses the federal government's urgent concern involving counterfeit parts. And so that particular process we use by using government websites and assets and other information to ensure that no counterfeit parts are delivered. And that's in the end, that's the end state. So we are audited by those three agencies, the FAA, AS 9100, and we are also audited for the AC 0056, but each one of the large companies, Honeywell, Boeing, Lockheed, L3, all insist on doing their own audits. So,
Okay.
so yes, we get a lot of visitors.
And of course, it all makes sense since we're talking about aircraft safety here,
Correct.
which is very important.
Correct.
Now, in some cases, you actually manufacture the parts?
Yes, that's correct.
What would be an example of something like that?
There really is an example. If you go ahead and send us the blueprints, we will give you the bid on manufacturing and delivery.
Okay. Do you actually do aircraft repair at your facility?
No, but we are a certificated repair facility. We do component repair.
Okay.
So we consider ourselves a third-tier repair facility. So you take the brake off the aircraft in Chicago, you send it to a brake shop in Milwaukee, who tears it down and then distributes the parts to their subcontractors. So that's us at the third tier.
You had mentioned that you've also started another division of your company in project management.
Well, we do remediation and repair for government facilities in the summertime, both in the Upper Peninsula and just regionally. So we've done work for the U.S. Park Service, the Army Corps of Engineers, and the U.S. Coast Guard in Sault Ste. Marie.
You know, I was looking at your website and, you know, some of the projects you've worked on, for example, the KC-10, you know.
That's correct.
The Boeing's wide-body aircraft.
Absolutely.
And the Chinook helicopter. Obviously, these older aircraft must provide a good market for you with trying to keep them in service.
To go back to our strategy of development when we first laid out the cornerstones of the company, it's much akin to you owning a car. If you're not making much money or you don't have much money, do you buy a new car or get it repaired? You get it repaired. That's our repair station element.
Okay.
Once you're doing a little bit better and you want to buy new, that's our manufacturing and distribution element. So we meet the multiple demands of the marketplace in aerospace.
And how do you spend your time? What is your role in making this company work? I know you're the president, but are you involved in sales, or what's the key responsibility for you? What takes most of your time? Let's put it that way.
The general management and training. And a case in point, we remain a small business. So Monday morning, I'll be working in shipping and receiving. I also do reviews of all purchases prior to acquisition and or approval of large contracts. Nearly everything. It's difficult to, and for example, right now we're in the middle of a republishing of our FAA manual, so that for the next 2 weeks will completely consume my time.
I want to get back to this subject of training people for jobs today, but we have to take one more break. Back with more on the Ryan Report in just 2 minutes. Once again, talking to David Goudreau of Northern Wings Repair. We were talking during the break a little bit, but you know, getting people to understand that you can do this job from Newberry, Michigan, and in fact you do, and you're very successful at it. You know, there's a little piece to that. Some people feel that being here in the UP provides some advantages. At least when you get that workforce, they seem to know what their job is and get committed to it. Is that a fair statement?
That's very fair.
Yeah.
That's very fair.
But that is an issue, isn't it, really, getting a qualified workforce, not just, in fact, at the Operation Action meeting we attended, it was a common theme throughout the whole discussion that getting qualified employees is very difficult today.
That's correct, especially in the skilled trades, and there's a term for it called the skilled trades gap. And that's a problem that's looming in the future.
And how is this affecting your company? Is it holding you back?
Probably the single largest impediment to our growth is a qualified, skilled workforce. We have to train our own, and we must generally start at zero. So.
And you mentioned even in the case of your salespeople, they have to know the product and know the service very well to be able to go out and meet with customers.
That's a fact. It takes us over a year just to train a salesperson in all of the aspects of the quality system, the FAA, and how we function and operate and record keep.
You're actively involved as still president of the Eastern Upper Peninsula Workforce Development Board. You know, help people understand how serious this issue is of training the next generation of workers and the generation beyond that.
The forecast is for in 5 years we're going to be 50% short of our skilled trades. And we talk about skilled trades, it's carpentry, electrician, machining, anything involving hands. And so that's in 5 years, and they can't forecast to 10. Which is relatively easy if you've got a relative that does your plumbing and you know a little about electrical. But when you want to then develop a business that must, you've got to have the trained pros. part of what we're doing at Northern Wings is this October at the fairgrounds in Luce County, we're going to sponsor a skilled trades job fair where students, both 11th and 12th graders from the entire Eastern Upper Peninsula can come and take part in all of the skilled trades. We're hoping to have mobile machining, welding, be able to operate a backhoe, actually dig a hole, climb a pole, do and see and engage those particular skilled trades.
We're seeing a lot of discussion today and a lot of interest in career technical education, beginning back in the high school level and even before. Is that, do you think, critical to this process?
Absolutely. And the system has, unfortunately, however it got there, steered everyone towards a college education. And when that took place, we kind of lost all of that hands-on time in high schools. And now we've got to get that back. And so there are, and I know in the Eastern Upper Peninsula there are there's a millage proposal to do exactly that. So,
I understand that Michigan Works was very helpful to your company as you were growing and getting off the ground.
Absolutely, they provided much of our training, and you have to understand, people don't understand when we send employees for training, they pay tuition and books, and we pay the rest. So with that said, when it's done, the employee is actually the beneficiary. He's trained for life. He receives the certification and qualification. And then it's up to us to try and convince him to stay with us, because now he or she is a highly trained individual.
We have only 30 seconds left. What's the future for Northern Wings Aviation Repair?
Well, it's continued growth. We're not going anywhere. We have now got our foot well into supplying around the globe, and we'll just keep expanding.
As I say, it's always fascinating to me to see companies like yours growing here in the UP. Most people aren't familiar with the fact that it's happening, except people in Newberry, for example, in this case. Mm-hmm. But this is really a key to economic development in the UP, wouldn't you agree?
I would have to say that we are indeed the model. What we want is people's revenue and not the people to move here. Quite frankly, if you ask anyone who lives here, they don't want more people. Okay. But they certainly would like the business.
Excuse me. Thanks for coming in this morning and talking about your company. Appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
Okay. Back with more on the Ryan Report after we take this break. On last week's show, I said I would have one more story about the former March of Dimes telethons this week, but we'll have to put that off for a week or two for something more important. March is Colon Cancer Awareness Month, and it's so important that we all pay attention to the recommendations of medical professionals regarding this very serious disease. Colon cancer claims thousands of lives every year, and most of them can be prevented. Colon cancer usually begins as a small, non-cancerous polyp. Over a period of time, these polyps can develop into colon cancer. The important thing to know is that oftentimes the development of the cancer can take 10, 15 years or more. So if the polyps are identified and removed, the cancer never develops. This is why screening for colon cancer can save lives. And that's why, back in 2004, I devoted an entire show to this subject. That included an in-depth interview with Dr. Frank Welsh, now retired, and my undergoing a colonoscopy on camera. This morning, we're going to take you back for just a brief look at an excerpt from the day I had a colonoscopy on TV. I should warn you in advance, for those who are a little squeamish, the visuals do include a look at the inside of my colon. Here's that video from 2004.
Rectal turnaround here first. There we are. Rectal vault looks good. There's no sign of any polyps there. Let's take a biopsy of this, Brian. Taking a biopsy of a fold that's probably normal. I'm going to see what it shows under the microscope. Open, please. Close. And if it's normal, as I suspect, you can take that out. It's inconsequential, but we like to be 100% safe. I'm looking at I'm looking at any abnormalities or any polypoid type lesions, which would show up as bumps, or sometimes they're sort of like stalked, like small little mushrooms with a stalk and a head. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for any changes in the lining that might suggest other problems. The colon has other diseases besides neoplastic diseases, inflammatory diseases of the colon, ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease, etc. We look for. It went well. We're finishing up, Don. Yeah, that looks good.
As I said when I took the test back then, the hardest part was the preparation. I pretty well slept through the whole thing. Dr. Welsh and I talked about colon cancer in depth for the show, but this one comment pretty well sums it up.
My basic advice is to think about a disease that, if you look at all the causes of death from cancer in this country this year, death from colorectal cancer is number 2, and it's preventable. And it's that simple. In the vast number of cases, it's virtually, and actually, with all the screening that we are doing, the incidence, it looks like it's coming down.
The number of deaths each year from colon cancer has been coming down, but last year more than 50,000 people died, and many of those deaths could have been prevented with advanced screening. Our final thought on the subject this morning: talk to your doctor about what you should be doing regarding screening for colon cancer. Could save your life. I'll be back in 2 minutes. Time to wrap it up for another week. Thanks to David Goodrow for coming in this morning to help us learn more about Northern Wings Repair, a unique business serving the world from Newberry. By the time next week rolls around, April will be here. I can't wait to see what that brings for us. Today's show is set to roll now. Time for us to say goodbye. Thanks for joining us today, and please join us again next Sunday morning.